Yeah, Woods is absolutely single-handedly assassinating one of my fantasy teams. So I'm very familiar with how disappointing he's been. I had the option to take him or Kupp, and I took Woods, and it's the biggest regret I have.
Hello and welcome to Monkey Knife Fight Live, folks. I'm Connor Rowntree, and we're joined by Nick Whalen from Rotowire today to talk a little Thursday night football. It's the Rams of Los Angeles visiting the Seattle Seahawks and the 12th man. But before we bring Nick in here, folks, I just want to mark a little thing out to you, all of our listeners out there. September marked our best month in our Young Channel's history, but we know we can do better in October. All your MKF live picks and plays featuring hosts like myself. You've got our good friend over here that you can see, Nick Whalen. And then we have Dan, John, and Joe, and some new NBA content coming your way for this season. And all you have to do is subscribe. It's that easy. Free picks, good times, good laughs, and Nick Whalen's mustache as he takes a sip of coffee and covers it.
That was a tough time for me to take a sip.
I was going to say,
yeah,
actually,
bad timing.
John McKechnie also has a great mustache.
Yeah, his is so much better than mine. He has so much more bushiness factor.
Do you have to have a mustache to work at Rotowire? Are those the rules?
We're not supposed to talk about this, but it does appear that way, yes.
He's all right.
No worries, ladies and gentlemen. That's Nick Whalen welcoming himself to the show and his mustache. Must be a big day for the Mo. If we can get a zoom in on that, that would be hilarious. But in a game of averages, oh, there it is.
Yeah, we're gonna do a self zoom.
Talking on Thursday night football, if we get into the quarterbacks now, in a game of averages, Matthew Stafford looks really good heading into Seattle on Thursday night. Here's why. Stafford has thrown at least 2 TDs passes in each of the Rams' first 4 games this season, averaging right around 300 yards passing. Seattle's defense is giving up an average of nearly 300 yards passing and 2 touchdowns per game. So I like Stafford to throw for at least 300 yards and 2 touchdowns tonight. So I'm going to take more on Matthew Stafford's line at 306 because of all those reasons I just said. Seattle's been getting got in the past game, and that's just my expression this week, getting got, and that's how I see it going. Matthew Stafford with the more on Thursday night football.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I felt like last week was about as badly as we'll probably see Stafford play this season. I think he just misfired a lot. You know, I think there were a lot of open looks that he was hitting the first few games of the season, and he just had an off night. I mean, I don't think there's a better way to explain it. You know, he wasn't leading guys in the same way that he's been. He was thrown behind receivers. I think he just didn't have it, and I think he's certainly proven that he had it in the first few games. His whole career, he's proven that he has it. I think that's a blip on the radar type of game, and I think the Rams bounce back tonight, and I think Stafford bounces back in a big way against the Seahawks team that's bottom 10 in the league in net yards per attempt. Like you said, I think the Seahawks defense maybe still carries somewhat of a reputation that dates back to 2012, 2013, 2014. Most of the guys from those teams are long gone. You know, they're still a team that has proven that when you have Russell Wilson, you can go in and beat anybody on any given night. But the days of this being like one of the best defenses in the league they're just not the same anymore. And the secondary especially has fallen off, you know, from their peak years. So even in a game last week where Matthew Stafford, like I said, didn't have it, you know, just didn't really look like they were on the same page against the Cardinals defense that's good, not great. He still got to 280 yards, you know, on only 26 completions. I think with the offense, you know, presumably clicking a little bit better, I think he pretty much cruises to the over on this number.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I think one thing to note upon too, right? That Legion of Boom is completely dismantled, as you said, right? Just alluding to it. I mean, Bobby Wagner is really the only piece left of that defense. And that's a pretty good piece. You can't be mad with Bobby Wagner, but it's also Bobby Wagner 10 years older. And with the rest of the pieces around them, I just don't see Stafford being able to be contained with the weapons like Cooper Kupp, with Robert Woods, and with Higbee, who's also had a great season. On the other side of the football, though, Russell Wilson, if there's one thing I can count on Russell Wilson to do, it is keep his team in the game come hell or high water. The Rams, they have the 8th worst pass defense in the NFL entering tonight. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I'm taking more on Russell Wilson. As I said, come hell or high water, I think he keeps these Seahawks in the game.
Yeah, this one's tough because you look at last week and,
Yikes.
You know, Seattle always wants to run the ball like they ran it last week. You know, I think almost to their detriment over these last few years, they've like desperately tried to establish a running game to supplement Russell Wilson. And oftentimes, you know, they just end up plowing into the line and punting. But they got Alex Collins going. I mean, that was maybe the best game of his career
Mhm.
last week against San Francisco. And Russell Wilson, only completes 16 passes, only throws 23 passes in that game. Doesn't even get to 150 yards despite 70% completion. So I don't think we see a game like that where they're able to kind of cruise in the second half. Like once Trey Lance entered that game, I think Seattle felt pretty good about being able to scheme against him and just kind of went into conservative mode and was happy to let Alex Collins bring them home. The question is, can you do that against the Rams? And I think the answer is probably a resounding no. But at the same time, 270.5, that is a lot against this defense. We did see the Rams get carved up by Kyler Murray last week. But I don't think that Seattle has the same kind of offensive line that Arizona has. Russell Wilson is mobile. He escapes sacks, but he's not on the same level as Kyler Murray. Excuse me. I think this is a kind of a self-challenge type of game for that Rams defense. And I think they come through in a big way. And I think they limit Russell Wilson to just under this number. So I'll go the opposite way on this, Connor. I'll take the less on, 270.5 for Russell Wilson.
So it's funny because we both see the game script going in a similar fashion. The difference is I just don't see Seattle getting that run game established with Chris Carson or not, depending if he's going to be healthy, right? I mean, you have Aaron Donald in the middle. Leonard Floyd's playing like the first round pick, the 8th overall pick that he was supposed to be with the Bears. And then you have that linebacking core. I mean, and not to mention Jalen Ramsey playing DB. So it's not going to be easy for Russell Wilson, but I think after that running game gets stuffed and the fact that the Rams, I'm very confident in the fact they will be able to put points on the board. I think it'll be Russell Wilson time, and that's why I'm sticking with the more. But I respect the less and your breakdown. And we see the game going in a similar way, as I just said. So let's talk about the running backs now. I mean, Darrell Henderson at 70 yards, that's what he needs. 69.5 is his line on MKF. Seattle has given up the most rushing yards this season. Is it going to be all Henderson? Because if it is, it seems like a pretty safe shot that he can get 70 yards, right, just pounding the gut against the league's worst rush defense. I mean, where is the Seattle defense that you mentioned from 10 years ago?
It's certainly not there anymore, that's for sure. I mean, Seattle giving up about 4.6 yards per attempt this season. Like you said, it's a far cry from the defense that we were used to 5 or 6 years ago. The question is, what's the breakdown going to be with Darrell Henderson back in this game? I mean, they were more than happy to entrust him, with a pretty decent sized workload before he got injured. You look at the 3 weeks that he's played this season, 16, 13, 14 attempts, got to 14 for 89 against Arizona last week in a game where they were basically passing for the entire second half. Didn't really have the luxury of establishing the run. So, I mean, the numbers, I think, certainly push you toward the more here. The question is, is this one too obvious? Are we missing something here?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly where I'm coming from. It's like, is this injury going to pertain a little more to this matchup than I know? Is Sonny Michel going to get some snaps at third down, maybe a little more of a schemed pass game? But if I'm looking at the numbers and I'm looking at Sean McVay, I think the best thing to do when you're playing the team's worst rush defense, pound the rock, get Darrell Henderson his touches, open up those shots for a gunslinger in Matthew Stafford. And that should be a pretty decent path to victory in a very hostile environment. One of the most hostile, if not the most hostile environment in the NFL. So I'm going to have to take more on Henderson just because I think the Rams are going to need to establish that run game to find success in that Sean McVay scheme heading into Thursday night. That's why I got to just lean towards the more.
Yeah, I'm with you on the more. Like I said, I think I'm a little worried that this number is maybe 10 or 15 yards lower than I would expect, but maybe it's just a gift from the MKF staff.
Well, we're looking at Chris Carson now on the other side of things. Now Henderson went through the same practice routine for the second.
Oh yeah, I recognize that site. Yeah.
Yeah, just the Rotowire log on the injury, not trying to distract. Just trying to pull it up for the people in case they were.
Hey, when I see something highlighted, baby, I'm going to it. On the other side of the rock, though, with the rush game for the Seahawks, LA has given up the 12th most rushing yards in the NFL. Chris Carson's line coming in at 54.5. You need 55 for the more on Monkey Knife Fight. Well, I do see some, as you said, they want to be able to run the ball. I think that Rams defense is too stout. Too stout in that rush defense. Oh, wow. It's dropped 10 yards. Okay.
I'm going to mention that since because of the injury that he is facing and they're not sure about his workload. Reports had dropped that line like 10, 15 yards.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Plus, he's not 100%. I'm going to take the less on that. Still at 46. Now, red zone touches. And if you have him in fantasy, I'm not saying to put him on the bench because he can rumble into the red zone, into the end zone from the red zone. But I'm taking the less on the 46.5 yards just because of the way that I see the Seattle Seahawks having to keep pace in this one.
Yeah, I mean, we don't even know if he's going to play right now. It seems like it could be truly 50-50. So you have to go less until he's cleared. And even if he is cleared, I think they really like what they saw from Alex Collins last week. I think if he's going to play in this game, he's not going to be nearly 100%, and they're not going to force feed him, when they don't have to. So, when healthy, maybe he's the better option than Collins. But, I think the way Alex Collins ran last week, you would take him at 100% over Chris Carson if he plays at like 70%. So for me, this is a pretty easy less.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. There's the running backs, folks. You can hit your whatever you want and more or less. Nick and I are both leaning with the less for the Seattle back in Chris Carson and the more with Mr. Henderson. Now let's talk a little wide receivers. Ty Lockett, after a pair of 100+ receiving yards to start the season, he has slowed down immensely. Now, that's a large part to what you alluded to, Seattle establishing the run game last week. And if Russell Wilson's only throwing for less than 150 yards, it's going to be tough for Ty Lockett to get 70.5. In this game, though, they're going to need Ty Lockett to do his thing. I don't like taking the more on receivers when it's about 70.5 because that is a lot of yards. But in this matchup, they're going to need to lean on Ty Lockett, especially with Jalen Ramsey covering with how effective Jalen Ramsey has been covering DK Metcalf, pardon me. So I have to take more on Ty Lockett.
Yeah, this one's really difficult. It kind of depends. Like, I wish we knew exactly what the plan was going to be for Jalen Ramsey, because if you tell me that Ramsey's going to be shadowing DK all night, then I say, yeah, I love the over on Tyler Lockett, who seemingly has like a 55-yard reception every single game and, pretty much gets you there just on that. So I do lean more. The question is he still bothered a little bit by that knee injury that looked really bad against Minnesota? Turned out to be not that bad at all. But, last week was pretty quiet, ended up being pretty quiet in that Minnesota game. But then you look at those first two games where, his average distance per reception was 25 yards in week 1, 22.3 yards in week 2. Week 3, that drops down to 7.8 yards. Week 4, it's 6 yards. So, we've kind of seen two different approaches with Tyler Lockett. Maybe, defensively, you got to imagine if you're in a defensive meeting as a Rams player, they're telling you, we cannot let this guy get behind us because Russell Wilson will drop one in anywhere on the field. So you would imagine that that's the mandate, for this defense last week. Of course, the Rams defense was not able to limit big plays against Arizona. So how much do we even trust them at this point? How much is reputation versus actual production? And this one's really, really tough, but I will join you on the more. I think Lockett probably goes just over. He's due for one of these long receptions after 2 quiet weeks.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And on the other side, Robert Woods is really taking a back seat. Me personally, I thought Matthew Stafford was going to come in there and shake it up a bit. Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods maybe a little more equal playing field partners, but they really are wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, with Kupp being the 1 and Robert Woods being the latter. Robert Woods, it's been a tough season. He's been held under 50 yards 3 times this season. The line at 60.5. I like that line for the less. I think it's a comfortable line for the less. Even if Robert Woods gets one big ball, he can still go under that with a couple other ones. Red zone threat, absolutely. But I'm going to take the less on Robert Woods just because what I've seen this season and the comfortability and the meshing that I've seen with Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp. And not only that, Tyler Higbee as well.
Yeah, Woods is absolutely single-handedly assassinating one of my fantasy teams. So I'm very familiar with how disappointing he's been. I had the option to take him or Kupp, and I took Woods, and it's the biggest regret I have in fantasy football this year. With that said, I mean, he's still – I don't think he's even their number 1 guy anymore. Like, we have to say he's their number 2 receiver. I know the way they line up Kupp, he's kind of used as more of a number 2, but he's clearly the top target. And I think Woods is – I mean, even like Van Jefferson has been more productive than Robert Woods this year. Every time they're in the red zone and it's a touchdown and you can't quite see who caught it, I'm like, oh, is that Robert Woods? And then he gets up and it's Van Jefferson. So it's just been disappointment after disappointment with Woods. Let's go a little differentiation here, though. I'll go more. I think he's due for somewhat of a breakout. And even if he gets to like 65 yards, that would qualify as a breakout for Robert Woods this season. He only has 1 game where he's gone over this total. The thing that's concerning is like the targets haven't even been there. I think he has 1 game. Yeah, week 2 against Indianapolis, he was targeted 9 times. other than that, it's 4 targets week 1, it's 6 targets week 3, 6 targets again last week. For a team that slings the ball around and has a really good quarterback in Matthew Stafford, you'd like to see those numbers creep more toward double digits. And maybe that just speaks to the other weapons they have in this passing game. But man, it's been a disappointment for Robert Woods.
Yeah, we lost your beautiful mustache halfway. Oh, no worries. No worries. We only missed the mustache. That's all. We got your analysis bang on. And it was just what I think it comes down to is, yeah, you have a good matchup against that Seattle defense for Robert Woods, but I'm just not seeing the comfortability with Stafford to get me to that point where 60.5 yards, give me that like a heck yes, which is why I'm leaning towards the less. As you said, right? Held under 50 yards in 3 out of 4 weeks this season. Target share doesn't look great. So I'm taking the less on Robert Woods and the more on Ty Lockett. Folks, make your picks, scroll down, and hit submit. Now, we were just talking about the other 2 wide receivers, Cooper Kupp and DK Metcalf, the 2 guys that are really pronounced themselves as the number 1 receivers within their organizations over the last 2 or 3 seasons. And if you look at Cooper Kupp, well, he went for less than 86 yards last week, and his line is at 85.5 yards, so you need that 86. He also had a season high with 13 targets. So, he had a slip up of a week. He's got his best target share of the season. So in this matchup, and basically any matchup, I'm going to be taking Cooper Kupp, and I'm going to be taking the more on Cooper Kupp. Just 85.5 right now, 87.5 right now on Monkey Knife Fight, folks. Give me that more all day, every day, because it's Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, this is a great line. I think he probably comes in right around this. What he did the first 2 weeks, maybe a little bit unsustainable. Last week, certainly a down week for Cooper Kupp, but still able to get to 64 yards on a day when Matthew Stafford just didn't have it. Super inefficient, just 5 catches on those 13 targets. But it really does come down to the targets. And with Kupp, it's been so consistent. We talked about how it's been a little bit disappointing what share of those targets Robert Woods is receiving. Cooper Kupp has double-digit targets in all 4 games. He has as many targets in the last 2 games alone as Robert Woods has on the entire season. So I'll go more here as well. I think this is a pretty big bounce-back opportunity for this Rams offense overall.
Yeah, I'm completely with you on that. And then this one's a tough one for me. But actually, it was a tough one. But as I looked into the numbers, breaking it down, DK Metcalf's gone less than 72.5 yards in 3 out of 4 games this season. Yes, he is a fantasy threat. But yes, Jalen Ramsey, in all likelihood, will be shadowing him. Like we've seen, like it's not just I'm saying Jalen Ramsey is going to be shadowing DK Metcalf out of the blue. I'm saying that he's going to shadow him. Jalen Ramsey's going to be shadowing Metcalf because that's what we saw last season. That's what we saw the year before. And he shuts Metcalf down. So I have to take the less on DK Metcalf. I think that's why I took the more on Ty Lockett. I said it. I think one of them is going to have a big game, and I'm taking Ty Lockett. DK Metcalf he gets shut down by Jalen Ramsey, and that's not a bad thing. Jalen Ramsey's the best corner in the NFL.
Completely agree. He's my favorite player in the NFL. I've never been more sad to see a player go. I mean, it's pretty awesome when your favorite player gets drafted to your favorite team, and then they completely mismanage the situation. And have to give them away, but that's neither here nor there. If you look at last year, we got 2 extremes with Metcalf going up against Ramsey. Week 10, DK Metcalf, 2 catches, 28 yards. They meet again later in the season, and 6 catches, 59. They meet again later in the season in the playoffs, 5 catches for 96. So
that's the big one.
2 out of 3 times he's held under this number. I'm with you. I think this is a situation where we see Ramsey really limit DK Metcalf. I could see Metcalf, getting in the end zone, maybe on, something like last week where you just kind of hit that short pass over the middle and he's able to hold on and kind of plow his way through. But I don't see this as a night where DK Metcalf is catching and racking up yak yards, against Jalen Ramsey and against this defense. I think the focus is on Metcalf. And like you said, Connor, if somebody goes off, it's probably Lockett.
Yeah, as you just said it, there's just going to be so much focus on DK Metcalf. I don't see him getting to that yard mark of 72.5. So we both like the less on DK Metcalf, folks. We both like the more on Cooper Kupp. Make your selections. Select your buy-in, pardon me. Head down, hit submit, and you're in to win. Now, there's a couple more lines with these receivers that we're going to take a peek at. It's the reception lines. Jason, if you could find those and pull those up. I mean, Cooper Kupp, we just said it. His line was on Monkey Knife Fight at 6.5 receptions. That means he needs 7. Double-digit targets. It's up to 7.5. So he needs 8 receptions. I mean, he's still getting double-digit targets. He's still getting double-digit targets every week this season. 13 targets last week, as I said previously, season high. I'm going to take the more on the 8 receptions for Cooper Kupp.
Man, this is truly a coin flip. I wish I could say like I feel really strongly about one side or the other. He has 2 games with 9 catches. He has 2 games with fewer than 8 catches. So who knows? I mean, like you said, like the target share implies that if Stafford is on and the Seattle defense is not really what we think it is, then there's a pretty good chance that if he gets 12 targets, he can catch 8 or 9 of them. But man, that's a tough number. I think for the sake of argument, I'll go under on 7.5. I think he can get to 6 or 7 for sure. That's almost the baseline with him right now. But locking in 8 or 9, like that's a lot of catches. Against the defense that's going to be prepared.
Yeah, no, it definitely is a lot of catches. But as I said previously, right, Seattle's defense is averaging right around 300 yards given up. Matthew Stafford loves Cooper Kupp. I'm pretty comfortable with that. I'm not rolling over. My pillow's cold and I'm falling asleep comfy. I'm in a tent and I have shelter, but I'm comfortable. That's that Cooper Kupp line for me. The Robert Woods line is very interesting at 5.5 receptions because of how few of targets he's been getting. But it's almost like 5.5. It's almost baiting me to go for the more. But on that one, I'm going to have to go for the less. I don't know where that projection is, but we are talking about it real quick here, folks. Robert Woods on Monkey Knife Fight at 5.5 receptions. Do you like the more? Do you like the less, Nick? Personally, I'm leaning the less.
Well, I think I'd like the more on Woods' yardage, so I should probably go more on the receptions here. With that said, this would be, if he goes over, it would be a season high catches. So you're asking him to do something that he hasn't necessarily done this year. Of course, we know the potential's there. He's had big seasons, big games in the past. You don't necessarily want to just kind of bank on everything just continuing because the situation is different. The quarterback's different. Kupp has emerged as the number 1 guy, but it really feels like Robert Woods has been woefully underused. And maybe last week is kind of a wake-up call for that offense. And they say, like, look, we can't just keep funneling every single look to Cooper Kupp. We have to make an effort to get the guy we thought would be our number 1 receiver more involved. So I could see that happening tonight. And Robert Woods isn't going to go the whole year, without having a game where he has more than 5 catches. So, again, I don't think either of us love this Seattle defense. We don't love this Seattle secondary. I think it's going to be a bounce back for Stafford. It's going to be a bounce back for the offense. And I think we see Robert Woods have his best game of the season tonight.
Nice. I love the confidence in Robert Woods because I have him starting on 3 of my fantasy teams, or 2 or 3. So I could use it. But as he has been, as you said, an assassin to my nightmares, or well, I guess my sweet dreams. I'm not confident in Robert Woods, and I'm looking at it and I just see the target share. 6 receptions is a lot. Hopefully he gets 5. Hopefully he goes off. Hopefully he scores 10 touchdowns, win the fantasy league, and that's the end of everything. Yeah, it'd be great. But that's not how it's going to play out. I can almost guarantee that. Nick Whalen, folks, that's him from Rotowire, and that is his beautiful mustache. Folks, I'm Connor Rowntree. Make sure you tune in to Monkey Knife Fight Live tomorrow when Nick will be back breaking down all of the games. Folks, cheers, and remember to hit it hard.